morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to be taking a look at Polteageist. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Polteageist is getting its first ever card in the Pokemon trading card game. And oh my goodness, this one could be really, really good. No guarantee, of course. We never know exactly whether it's going to be great or it's going to be terrible, but come on. This one looks fun. And if you think about it for even a second, you'll be able to guess what one of the attacks is. Now, one of the things that should strike you immediately about Polteageist, it is an evolved Pokemon that has 60 HP. That is absolutely terrible. Now, it is not without precedent. We did have the really good Alolan Dug Trio, the one that lets you discard a bunch of metal energy from your hand and do 60 damage for each one you discarded, which had 60 HP. Okay, that one was kind of cool. And that was actually for 0 energy, which was even more fun. But 60 HP is still really low. Except we've got Professor Owl's Lecture. We've seen also Pidgeotto has 60 HP as an evolving Pokemon. And again, Professor Owl's Lecture comes in beautifully here. It means you can search for both the pre-evolution and Polteageist. The pre-evolution, of course, Sinistea. And both of them can be got with Professor Owl's Lecture. Now, 60 HP is also incredibly low. It means something like an Espeon and Deoxys using its GX attack will be able to KO 3 of these with 2 damage counters left over if they've got 6 energy on. So it is mildly terrifying. And to be fair, we should mention that Sinistea here actually does have 30 HP, which is flat out terrible. Something like a Pheromosa and Buzzwole will just be able to KO you on the bench using the residual damage from their first attack. It is a very, very low amount of damage. I mean, take the Mew from Unbroken Bonds, which most people are playing at the moment just to give yourself a little bit of bench protection. Well, for 1 colourless energy, it lets you put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. That is enough to KO a Sinistea, even bearing in mind if they've got a Mew, Mew stops damage, not damage counters. Now, we do actually still have Sky Pillar in the format. Came out in Celestial Storm, so it's not rotated yet, which does prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, which will stop the damage counters being dropped, because that is an effect of an attack. But the point is, we've got extremely low HP here, and that's kind of terrifying. You've got a weakness to darkness, but you've got terrible HP through Really Cares. You've got a resistance to fighting, but you've got terrible HP through Really Cares. And you've got a retreat cost of 1, which is nice because of stuff like U-Turn Board. Also worth pointing out here that being a psychic Pokemon does mean you can use Spell Tag to drop a little bit of extra damage, and it means you can use Mysterious Treasure to search it out. So you're really not going to be worried about searching this. Searching is easy. And you're a nice type. But oh my goodness, that HP is terrible. Now, as for the first attack, it's weirdly exactly the same on both Sinistea and Polteageist. 1 colourless energy, tea time. Both players draw 2 cards. And this is fine. I mean, drawing 2 cards is alright, especially on a basic. And you don't see this all that often. I mean, Virizion can draw 2 cards, but that is just for you, not your opponent. A lot of the time, letting your opponent draw 2 cards is going to be a huge advantage for them, especially given that you're letting your opponent have an extra 2 cards right as it's going into their turn, so they're going to be able to use those cards immediately straight away on their turn, which means you're giving your opponent an advantage. There is a really cool thing here. Let's say your opponent's playing something like Excadrill, and they're trying to keep a very low amount of cards in their deck. If you make them draw 2 cards, and this is both players draw 2 cards, not both players may draw 2 cards, then that means that essentially you can deck your opponent out because they're forced to draw 2 cards, and then they have no cards left in their deck, and at the beginning of their turn, they instantly lose. There's no time for them to try and fix anything. They just instantly lose straight away, which is kind of funny if you ask me. So it's a fun little attack, but it's kind of a nothing attack. It's not the main point of the card. The main point of the card is Polteageist. And if you didn't predict that a Pokemon called Polteageist was going to have the attack Polteageist, well, I don't know, maybe you don't think about this stuff 24 hours a day like I do. I have no regrets. This is my obsession. One psychic, one colourless energy. Your opponent reveals their hand. This attack does 50 damage for each trainer card you find there. This is actually a really good version of Polteageist. The last decent non-GX we got with Polteageist was the Trevenant from Guardians Rising, but that was 30 times. This is 50 times. Gengar and Mimikyu does 50 times, and that's on a free prize tag team Pokemon. And we'll get there in a minute, but doing it for a Psychic and a Colourless is way better than doing it for a Psychic and a Psychic. It's because of counter gain. I'll explain it properly in a moment. This is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. This is absolutely ridiculous. Your opponent has a handful of trainers, and bearing in mind it is trainers, that is items and supporters and tools and stadiums, though tools are items, and you do 50 damage for each one. If your opponent's got 4 trainers in their hand, you're doing 200 damage. And you might think, well, yeah, but come on, Wassy, our opponents are just gonna try and empty their hand out of trainers. Reset stamp. Boom. In the early game here, Reset Stamp is amazing. It puts your opponent down to a hand of 6 cards. But the thing is, it's a random hand of 6 cards right now. And that's what's beautiful about this. And of course, let's not forget that we've still got Surprise Box, which lets you grab an item card, or any card in fact, trainer or otherwise, from your opponent's discard pile and put it into their hand. So you can basically play a Reset Stamp, then play a Surprise Box, and your opponent's got a hand of 7 cards. You know for a fact one of them's a trainer. You put it in there. It's brilliant. And the other fun thing about something like Polteageist is that your opponent is going to go, ha ha ha, I'm going to play all of my items before I want to so that you can't take advantage. Brilliant. Awesome. You're slowing yourself down deliberately. You're hurting yourself deliberately to try and hurt me. Yeah, go for it. That sounds absolutely fine to me, ladies and gentlemen. That sounds absolutely fine to me. Either they play the trainers when they see them regardless, or you end up doing more damage. Either way is good. And please, please note that 50 times is so much better than 30 times. Obviously here there's going to be a fun combo with something like Omastar. Omastar will item lock your opponent so they can play supporters but they can't play items. Then you come in with Polteageist. It is the way that some people are playing Gengar and Mimikyu at the moment, though it hasn't actually proven itself to be a real top tier deck. It's good, it's fun, but it's not proven itself to be a proper top tier deck yet. Good, not great. But I don't even think you need to when you're doing 50 times on a single prize Pokemon. All you need to do here is just play stuff like Reset Stamp, play stuff like Surprise Box. And of course there are some cards we can use to actually look at our opponent's hand and see how much we're going to be doing. Sabrina's Suggestion lets you look at your opponent's hand and use a supporter card you find there as the effect of this one. So you know whether you want to play something like a Reset Stamp or not. Peeking Red Card, your opponent reveals their hand. You may have them count the cards in their hand, shuffle them into their deck and draw that many cards, but you don't have to. So Peeking Red Card here is a brilliant, brilliant option. I know the print I'm showing you here is from Crimson Invasion, but it was reprinted as a secret rare in Ultra Prism, so it is still in our format at the moment. And this one, you actually get to look at their hand and refresh it all at once, though you don't increase their hand size, which something like Red Card, you might be able to. So there's plenty of good ways to do this. I also kind of like Gloom, because on a coin flip, you get to look at your opponent's hand, and then find a basic Pokemon to put on their bench. But it's just nice to look at their hand. Honestly, it would be really nice if we still had Gumshoe's GX, though this may be the kind of deck you don't really want to play a GX in. But it just lets you look at their hand once during your turn, which is kind of cool. Except let's not forget that we've actually got in the format at the moment Lavender Town, which just lets you look at your opponent's hand. That's going to be your stadium of choice here. So frankly, you've got a lot of ways to try and make sure your opponent has lots of trainers in their hand. As for the energy cost, don't worry about it. You can get this rolling really easily by using Miss Magius from Unbroken Bonds, KOing it to put yourself down on prizes, and then using Counter Gain, which will reduce your attack cost by 1 if you're behind on prizes, which you will be, because you've played Miss Magius. That, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely lovely. And of course, it being a psychic Pokemon, you've always got Malamar to accelerate the energy if you'd prefer. So my point here is that getting the energy on here just really isn't going to be a big deal. You should be able to get the energy rather easily. And then what you've got is just a brilliant, brilliant card that is extremely weak. So weak. But you can be doing huge damage and KOing 2 and 3 prize Pokemon. And when you're doing huge damage and KOing 2 and 3 prize Pokemon, you start to forgive the fact that this Pokemon's a little bit weak because the prize race is absolutely in your favour. If you're in the expanded format, you could use Dimension Valley to bring it down to a single energy attack. But remember, if you use Dimension Valley to bring it down to a single energy attack, you're not using Lavender Town, and Lavender Town here is pretty gosh darned important. My point here very simply is, this is great, and I love it. There we go. Oh, sorry, we need to give it a score, don't we? I'm giving it 4 Wassies. If it wasn't so gosh darn weak, I'd be giving it 5 Wassies. I love this. I think there is so much potential, and I think someone is going to make a deck of this, and it's going to be awesome. But I'd like to know what you think about it. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.